Welcome, Adventures. It's Alvin here, and I just checked out an indie horror game that helps satisfy that little nightmare's itch, and it was a welcome surprise. I see more and more people that are hungry for games similar to that of Little Nightmares. I'm not sure whether it's the ambiguous storytelling, or it's a purely a horror attraction thing, or a weird factor thing that keeps pulling us back, but I can tell you it's working. There are very few games that can successfully tell their story without ever uttering a word. And in that sense, Little Nightmares' art and storytelling through its visuals is a masterpiece. Little Nightmares is the kind of game that has you in search of little story crumbs that may reveal something. A game that even after finishing it leaves you wanting more, searching for theories, going through the comments to find everyone's interpretation of something, and its ambiguous storytelling is what causes us to seek out each other and where we find our common love for games like Little Nightmares. Now, The Strange City is clearly inspired by Little Nightmares. The similarities are undeniable, but it isn't a bad thing. In fact, they did a really good job. While not without its flaws, this compact Little Nightmares like game did a lot of interesting things, and I wish it did flesh out its universe, story, and expanded on some of the really cool things it did. Things that we rarely see in other games or the Little Nightmares franchise take full advantage of. So if you're hungry for more Little Nightmares, you're gonna love this one. Vamonos. The Strange City follows Agent G, who awakens after a brutal car crash and is lured into the Strange City by these mysterious lights, and then her adventure begins. Now, with the same and familiar cryptic beginnings, we weren't told why the protagonist was there or what she was looking for. And much of the story I've interpreted is partially speculation, but personally, that's what makes these games so good and captivating, pushing me forward and excited to learn more about the world. I won't talk too much on it as to avoid any unwanted details, but I do think The Strange City falls short in the visual storytelling aspect. I would have even appreciated it being done with in-game documents lying around the levels or something of that nature. Sometimes the game left me wondering whether or not the developers were able to complete the story that they had originally intended to do so. Because when this game released, it was kind of shadow dropped with little to no marketing, almost suspiciously, if I might add. What little details they gave us was in the weird scenes, although when they did appear, they had me glued to the screen searching for any small detail. The Strange City chapters take place in their own distinct locations and have their own themes. You'll adventure from locations like the hospital, a school, a meat factory, to other unique places. Much like Little Nightmares, it's the monsters that really make these levels memorable and will stick with you. Gameplay wise, you'll expect to do things like vaulting over objects, using familiar stealth mechanics, and problem solving tactics. But nonetheless, knowing the blueprint for the game doesn't lessen the heart inducing moments. Despite the obvious similarities with Little Nightmares, The Strange City still has its own unique and memorable moments. From the awkward elevator ride with the hospital staff, to being surrounded by four nurses, but it doesn't turn out the way you've always imagined. And The Strange City does a pretty good job from keeping the attention from one room to the next, as being caught by one of the game's twisted and strange monstrosities come with its own unique death. From being slaughtered by the dual-wielding nurse to being swallowed whole by a teddy bear, rarely are we able to outrun anything, equipped with nothing but our little feet and our trusty flashlight. That hardly illuminates, by the way. I wish we had more control over the flashlight, over what we could spotlight. It made it very difficult to explore in the early levels. That's when, at least when I was still trying to explore and find any little story crumbs that I could find, and I quickly learned there were far few to find. For the most part, the puzzles in the Strange City required little effort and were pretty straightforward, but this also made it less likely for me to explore because the answers were always right in front of you. I even got stuck in between places after vaulting over objects and landing in places I was never intended to go. But I just loaded my last save and it always brought me back to the same room. So it wasn't a big issue, and hopefully the developers have patched this by now. Shortly after I completed the game, I know they issued a bunch of patches, so hopefully that addressed that issue. Alright guys, I'm going to quickly touch on one of my favorite moments in the game without going too much into spoilers, and how I really wish if they implemented this on every level, how it would have done wonders for the game and set it apart from the Little Nightmares. Even though I'm aware that the Little Nightmares has done it in the past, boss battles, while they aren't combat in the game, in the Strange City, there will be a moment where it's kind of a boss battle. And it wasn't combat focused, but rather puzzle based. Over and over again, I'd fail, finally realizing what I was supposed to do. But even then, it wasn't that easy. And by the end of it, it really felt rewarding and defeating the boss. But sadly, it was one of those things that happened once and never returned. Little Nightmares did this with the lady towards the end of the first game, and later on would go on to do this in Little Nightmares 2 with 6. But that's Little Nightmares, and frankly, it didn't need to because it did so many other things right. But this felt like it would have fit perfectly in the Strange City, and where the Strange City lacked to form its own identity, it would have surely created something to separate itself. The Strange City is a game that could be viewed as just okay, but at the same time, it's a game that I actually had a pretty decent time with. And especially if you're looking for something to scratch that Little Nightmares itch. While it doesn't go and reinvent the wheel, it follows a formula, and it does it pretty well. It has its own unique and memorable moments, and while sometimes it suffers to separate itself and form its own identity, I think it solidifies that people are eager for games like this. Games like Limbo, Inside, and what I think we are all really looking forward to, Reanimal, Little Nightmares 3. The Strange City is currently on Steam for $13. There are a total of 5 chapters, and it took me approximately 4 hours to complete, with other players completing the game in as little as 2 hours. Anyway guys, thank you so much for checking out the video. Let me know what you guys think of the Strange City. And if enough of you are interested in Little Nightmares like games, please let me know. As well, drop some recommendations. We might check them out. We currently are running a playlist where we're checking out boss rush games. You can see that over here. If you guys are interested, check it out. But as always, guys, thank you so much for checking it out. And I'll see you guys on the next one.